Hi, everyone. Um, Tell me, how many of you love to be scared? How many of you are addicted to getting scared? Just so you're permanently scared. You're beyond fear. So I was told that an Indian anthology on spooky stories was overdue because the last one that I think Penguin brought out was about 10 or 15 years back. So this is the book, and this is not going to be a formal launch. This is more, the authors talking to you about their experiences writing the stories. There was a review today in Deccan Herald of the book, so I just thought I would read out the lines that are about the writers here. They've coupled Usha's story with Manavendra Bandyopadhyay's story, and they've said Manavendra is the plays, Plays, plays upon the vague boundaries of sanity along with Usha KR's elixir. So Usha will tell you more about it. It's a very subtle ghost story. I feel, if you read it too much in a hurry, you will even miss the ghost, you know. So you have to read. It is a compliment, yes. Because, by the way, in this book, ghosts come at you from uh, all levels. So, Madhavi's ghost and Jahnavi's ghost and Usha's ghost and my ghost, they come at you from different levels. So it's not, they're not comparable at all. They're each very, very unique ghosts. Janvi Barua's Falling reminds you of the good old ghost story with its soft emotional touches of love, loss, and remembered tenderness. She brings alive a picturesque village in Shillong on a rainy evening with a little corner tea shop and the suggestion of an eerie rendezvous as a rainbow arcs across the late afternoon sky. So her ghost is someone you, when you reflect upon it, you have met pretty solidly, you know, in the story. And Madhavi's story is, the reviewer has really liked a lot. So she has said, what hooked me completely was Madhavi Mahadevan's The Tiger Woman of Kabul, which expands the span of ghostly practices through centuries of conflict, war. The setting and narrative pace are compelling and relentlessly drive you to an unsettling end. And I would say her ghost, in fact, is even more subtle than Usha's ghost because it's a very hidden ghost. And we only hear of him in very commonplace, ordinary cafe kind of conversations. Okay. Now I would request all of them to read from their stories. Usha, shall we start from there, or you're okay to go first? Okay.
So what we've planned, Shinie, is that we read a little bit and then explain the context or talk about it. Okay, right. Yeah. Okay. Um, we could do that, or I think I'll just. It's a very short excerpt, and I'm hoping you'll read the story to know more about it. This is from my short story, Elixir, which is in the anthology. When she returned to her room from the lounge after her perfect evening, a draught of air from the windows made the curtains flap. It stopped her dead in her tracks, even as she tried to figure out what was odd about it. It must have been from the window, because it was certainly not from the air conditioner. The heavy curtains were drawn, but the light, gauzy ones were pulled across the wall to wall sheath of clear protective glass. Beyond the balcony and far below, the city lights glowed like warm coals, and the Mediterranean pulsed beyond. She had checked the door leading to the balcony before leaving her room, as she always did, and she pushed the curtains aside to check once again. The lock was securely in place. The room, with its soft light and her standing in the middle looking uncertain, was reflected in the mirror. She caught sight of herself and pulled herself together. Too much of elixir, she shrugged off the feeling. She should not have had a whole bottle of it when she had an early morning flight to catch. She mentioned it casually to a friend immediately after she got home. They were sitting in a lounge bar called the Noon Wine on a Sunday afternoon, and she was describing the view of the Mediterranean from the window to her room to the friend who rarely traveled. I could feel it, that presence, that thing sitting in the chair looking at me. It must be your alter ego, the friend said. She was hurt by that. She felt it was a catty remark, even if it was a joke. But the friend made up after that. She sent her a bottle of rose water to bathe her eyes, to cool them down. So that's the excerpt from Elixir. Uh, when Shinie invited me to contribute a story to this anthology, I said, oh, a ghost story, because when I think of ghost story, what would come to my mind is something like Henry James' Turn of the Screw, which is very spooky and which involves children. Or you have The Blue Light by Vaikom Muhammad Bashir, which has a mystic quality to it. Or say something like the British writer from the 30s, M.R. James, who really, your heart goes dead and heavy when you read his writing. If you really want to get scared and spooked out, M.R. James would be it. And I thought my writing, my style is grounded in realism. And I thought, what would it need? It was a challenge for me. I said, what would I need to do? It would have to be a leap into the unknown to write a ghost story. So I said, what I would have to work on is, rationality and reason meets the inexplicable. So my character is very grounded. She's a self-made woman, and she's worked very hard, and she's very sure of who she is. And suddenly she finds that she starts losing control. And she does not know it. The readers know it. And she loses. This is how the story moves forward. And when you think of a ghost story, you think of, say, voices, sudden sounds, a buzz in the dark, the invisible hand brushing against yours. You think of seeing things. So what I thought was, if I use these devices of the standard ghost story, there should be organic and to the story, and I need to persuade my readers when I make that leap from the known to the unknown. Uh, Here I want to read quotation from Aristotle. Aristotle said, one should prefer probable impossibilities to implausible possibilities. That is, you have to convince your readers of an impossibility rather than just extend what is possible and not do it well. So, whether it is a story which is realistic, which is of the real, or it is a ghost story, I feel that the author has to do the same thing. Convince the reader that yes, this is possible. It may be fantastic, it may be out of this world, but it is possible. The story has to be convincing. The other thing which I was interested in exploring in this short story and in my other writing too, and which is very relevant in today's environment, is the meeting point, the interface between the sacred and the secular, which is different, of course, from the religious. But this is something that we confront every day in our lives in different ways. And this is something that the story also explores. Thank you. Jahnavi?
I just wanted to talk about. I just wanted to add about Usha's story that what I really like she said, it has a very everyday, ordinary quality. So you're not expecting, some major music and something to fall on you. It just takes you very gently along, and then when you do know what is happening, and you're seeing it through this woman's mind, So what I really liked is that um, commonplace, very everyday kind of thing, and also the detailing that you do, where she is traveling abroad, and then how she's living now. Just one bucket, one mug, one switch, whatever, and the fan may work, not work. Whereas she was such a sophisticated traveler,
Yes.
painstakingly, coming to that sophistication. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll just say something about Janvi's story before she reads. Is that like how Usha has written the way she usually writes her stories? There's an Usha style. So there is an Janvi style. So people who are familiar with Janvi's work, you'll find that same calmness, that same composed serenity in this ghost story too.
Thank you, Shinie. Before I start, I'll talk about the context of the story first and then do the reading. So, the first reaction I had was similar to Usha's, because I was taken aback when Shinie said ghost story. Because you have to first examine whether you believe in the supernatural, the paranormal, and then get to convince your reader. And I'm from a scientific background. I used to be a doctor at one point in my life, and I had to sit down and examine that, do I really believe in ghosts before I begin to write this? So I sat down a bit. I said yes to her straight away, but I sat down a bit, and I couldn't make up my mind really. And you can never say never. I can't say there is a ghost. I can't say there are no ghosts. We feel the same way about God, a lot of us. So I said, fine, let me do something I believe in, and let me try to convince my reader. So although it looks like a traditional ghost story, at a certain level, and I'm hoping some readers get this, it is not. And the clue to this is in the title Falling, and in the fact that I used to be a doctor at one point in time, and I used to work in a psychiatric unit. So there's a big clue there. So the story starts like this. It's like Shinie said, a very simple story. So no fireworks. It's a very simple opening. The setting being the hill town of Shillong in the northeast, and any of you who know Shillong or have been there, it's a very atmospheric town. So it's very cliched, but I returned to Shillong to set my ghost story in it because typically gloomy, misty, rainy, spooky kind of feeling can be evoked very easily there. So it starts in a small corner shop. The rain was coming down in opaque sheets. From where I sat at the table in the corner of the shop close to the window, I could not see the main road anymore. The grinding of cars making their way up the steep slope was not audible either. Occasionally, through the drumming of the rain on the tin roof, I could hear the fragmented sound of a car horn. Each time I held my breath, waiting to see if the car would stop, if the door to the shop would open. 3 hours now, and no one had stepped in. More tea? The shop lady, Violet, I think her name was, asked. Yes, please. My 4th cup so far. Mid-afternoon, but it was dark as night. Violet had turned on the lights in the shop, and they filled the cramped space with a welcome warmth. I watched Violet move around the counter. This was an old-fashioned corner shop with all the goods stacked at the back. No self-service here. Anything the customer wanted was handed out by Violet, who owned the shop, or her niece, who I had met once or twice. The table in the corner shop and the cup of tea, often served with a quarter plate of glucose biscuits, was Violet's only concession to the changing times. We had never met here, although it would have been an ideal place to meet, warm and dry and escape from the frequent wet spells. It was far enough from where I was staying, yet close enough for it to be a pleasant walk. Yet some stirring of caution stopped me from bringing him here. I would wait for him at the table, and the instant I saw him clear the hedge and stand at the gate, I would rush to pay for my tea. I always bought a packet of biscuits for us, a different one each time, which we would share afterwards on that cold, damp bench in the park at the bottom of the hill. So there's a bit of a gap. I'm skipping sections so to keep the suspense rolling. So it's still raining, she's still waiting, and suddenly, a loud thunderclap in the sky. The lights went out. Don't worry, child, Violet's voice rang out from the darkness at the back of the shop. I will get the lamp. The chemical smell of kerosene floated in from where she was, and then she appeared, a lamp in her hand. She set it down on my table. She sat down across me and reached out for a biscuit. What is your name, dear? She asked. Maya, I said. She asked what I was doing in Shillong. I told her my son had died 3 months ago. He had been 4 last summer, and then he went and developed leukemia that could not be cured. So sorry, dear. Violet reached out and tapped my hand. Thank you, I said. I suppose I'm here for a change of air. Are you waiting for someone today, or is it the rain keeping you? I kicked my duffel bag on the scrub pine floor deeper under the table. Then, without any definite reason, I told her about him. I must have wanted to share my story with someone, for it all poured out. I told her everything. When I finished, the rain had stopped, although the lights were still out. Violet locks up the shop, they step out to leave, and suddenly Violet looks at her. She says, "Bye, love." Then she says, "Wait, what did you say this young man's name was?" "John," I said, "John." Violet cocked her head and looked at me and said, "Do you mind if I walk a little way with you?" I was surprised, but we had both been cooped up all day, and I could understand her wanting to stretch her legs. The winding road was dark, night came early to the hills, and the power had not yet come back on. We fell into an easy rhythm, the road sloped upwards, we did not strain ourselves. "Where did you say he lived?" Violet said again. "At the end of the road." When we approached the turning, Violet laid a turn on my arm, said, "Do you mind if we walk on a little bit?" I was growing a bit impatient, but continued to humor the old lady. "Sure, if you want." We walked on in silence. At the end of the road, Violet stopped. A hedge grew to my right, well over my head. There was an iron gate set into it. "Here it is," she said, pointing beyond the gate. "John's house. John and Desmond Wallang's home, father and son, good men, carpenters they were." I did not understand. There was a shell of a small cottage where she was pointing. The roof had fallen in. In the weak light, I could see the walls were blackened and crumbling. "There was a fire here, child," Violet said, "a long time ago, 30 years ago, maybe more. Not uncommon, a spark from a fireplace in a wooden house here would just go up in flames." She turned around to face me. She put her palm on my cheek. "John Wallang died in that fire, dear, his father along with him." I shivered as a cold wind blew down from the top of the hill. It touched my face as if in greeting and vanished.
Thanks, Jahnavi. I'll ask Madhavi to read her story next. Ooh. Madhvi's story, I know spooks, most ghost story spooks have a guest appearance, but like I said in hers, her spook only appears in conversations and backdated letters.
Yeah. Well, this story is called The Tiger Lady of Kabul, and I'll just read out a passage and then speak a little bit about it. Ancient cities own their spirits. Kabul, 3,000 years old, bears in its dust lost worlds, dismembered lives. Dig anywhere and you will find in strata after strata the detritus of past cultures and recent conquests. Broken beads, shards of pottery, unexploded bombs, human bones. I'm not an archaeologist or an ethnographer. I have no interest in the past. I'm simply a middle aged policeman serving a tenure of duty in a combat zone. Yet, even I cannot help but feel that the world of spirits, the non RIP, is too close for comfort. It could be due to the recent bloody history of this country. War ridden places are said to be haunted by the paranormal. When I first arrived, I heard the stories circulating in expat gatherings of inexplicable phenomena that soldiers narrated as eyewitness accounts. Yeah. Okay, a little bit about the genesis of the story. Well, as both Usha and Jahnavi have said, the traditional ghost stories are dead. And one of the reasons why they are dead is because that world is gone. We don't have crumbling old bungalows anymore. We don't have desolate roads where, there's a skeleton waiting for you to direct you in the wrong direction into the river. Nor do we have graveyards. In fact, graveyards, which were scary when I was growing up because there were so many dead in it, are now actually peaceful places where you go if you want a bit of peace and quiet in the city. So the atmosphere is gone. This is a busy world, and in fact, it's a world where there's nothing to be really afraid of, because short stories, I mean, rather ghost stories, thrive on the fear factor. You have to keep, as an author, you're aware, you have to keep escalating the fear and make it look like an existential fear for the reader who is, so there's something out there in the unknown. It's going to grab you. You can't get away from this. And if you get away from it, you will probably die of fright. This is what a ghost story sets out to achieve. I found that there was nothing scary. I wasn't scared at all. Maybe I'm just grown up. But then I started looking at images around me, and I found that there were iconic images which kind of built a collage in my mind, starting with the planes going into the World Trade Center. Starting with that, perhaps every one of us remembers that image. Then there were others, and even today those images are continuing. You have them in Aleppo, you have them in Burma, you have them in Kashmir. So you have these bombed out cities, these conflict zones where people are wandering around looking for the past, which has just kind of evaporated in front of their eyes. And you have these long lines of refugees and people, you know, without any context anymore. And I wondered, aren't we all in a way becoming ghosts? But then and what is really haunting us? It seems to me that it is history that's haunting us. It's the past, which where you can call it decolonization, you can call it whatever you like. But the fact is that today it is history that has become the ghost, and that's how I got the genesis of this story.
Okay, I'll read mine. Once upon a time, there was no time, no once, just he and me, a good man, a bad woman, naked and curious, just dying to know. And before that, the incident with the snake and a fruit, apple, I think. I'm Eve, the world's first woman. Fresh off the boat, chromosome XX. And Adam, too busy tracking water and rubbing stones for fire. Nothing much to do, we get bored. I miss a period. And one fine day, I just died. Swapped dimensions and became a ghost. The world's first ghost. Breasts, smoke rings, uterus, water vapor. I was just hanging around doing nothing when I saw a man bash his wife up with her own baby. I went close. I went very, very close. I breathed in when she breathed out. I became her. I raised my hand, up came hers. We slapped him hard. No one sees me. They see only the meek woman with years of nodding behind her. On dark, moonless nights, I paced words on girl tongues, fighting words. But enough about me. We ghosts have work to do. You there, open your gob. Let me coat your sweet little tongue with dissent. Focus, my beautiful descendant. We have a no to say. As you can see, mine is the least ghostly story of them all. The ghost is like very, very upfront, saying she is the ghost. Do we have 3 questions? Okay. Any questions to my authors? You'll need a mic.
See, the intensity comes through in the passage that you read. Will you talk about that? Maybe it is to do with your style. Will you talk about the intense quality of Eve, or the ghost who then becomes every woman? Just tell us about her.
There's very appropriate music for accompaniment.
It's like someone eerily saying hello, hello throughout. Yeah. I think when I started to write this story, I was asked to contribute to a funny book, and that's a ghost story. And when I started writing this came out more, the ghost was very opinionated. And, and I just thought that I would explore the idea of, genetically us all going back to that one moment of no, which percolates down to all of us at times when we know something wrong is going on, but we nod even as we are saying in our head, No. I think that's probably where the intensity is from. Yes, so my authors are ready to answer questions.
We'll open this to the audience. Questions? They're all spooked out, Shinie.
I think it's because I wore a white
hungry.
sari. I look like the typical Hindi film
Or
ghost.
hungry. Or hungry, I would say.
Hungry? Okay.
Any questions? Suddenly we have two.
All of you have approached the idea of the ghost. You've sort of just, danced around the idea very gently.
No, but that's just the readings. You need to
okay.
buy the book.
Okay.
And you need
Is
to
it more
meet each
forceful?
ghost.
Is it more forceful in your because when you read whatever you read, it was much more intense, like Usha said, and when I heard what Jahnavi was reading, it was also very, the approach was slow. So does that pace pick up through the rest of the story, or is it like that? Is it subtle? Because there is merit in being subtle as well, right?
Yeah, I just want to add that, when I started to put together this collection, I did not want the usual ghost stories in any case. I wanted to see what the contemporary brilliant writers will do with this genre. And I feel that ghosts themselves have changed their personality. They are no longer going to swing at you from a chandelier and say, hey, here I am to spook you. So I feel each one of their stories have like ghost in a kind of real time context, through conversations, and someone talking to you in first person, almost from her head, you know.
I haven't read the book, but the impression I gather from all four of you is a sort of unanimous one that the classical ghost is dead and that is not going to come back because there are no old Havelis and things like that. So, first of all, on behalf of all ghosts, I want to register a protest. And after that, I just want to make a small comment. I think we can now graduate on to what is sometimes called supernature, which is a concept where a phenomena exists, but at the moment, science doesn't have an explanation for it. So perhaps that is the new definition of a ghost. And so if any of us want to write about ghosts, that is the area that I think we could be exploring.
Would you like to comment?
Yes, science fiction could be, the way forward for a ghost story. I was just wondering, does any one of the stories in the anthology have that approach? So, sorry.
Like I was saying, my story can be read in two ways. You can read it as a simple traditional ghost story, or you can read it as this is a spoiler, but as someone who has a delusion, a hallucination. So I've put medical science into my story. So not science fiction, but medical science.
Maybe this is a pointer to the audience that you could explore if you want to write a ghost story which grabs attention at all times. Here is a pointer for you.
We're taking one last question. I'm sorry, it has to be this.
Okay. My question is, why are most ghosts and ghost story writers female?
No, there is a very violent male ghost in this book. Manabhendra's story has a male ghost, and he's very scary. And Manabhendra is also a man.
All right, we'll have to bring this session to a close.
Thank you,
to all the
Amrita.
panelists.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Usha,
all the very
Jahnavi,
best.
Madhavi.
All right, thank you, audience.
Thank you all. Thank you.